Welcome to the Do Good X podcast, a sanctuary from the entrepreneurial grind. Hosts Kimberly Danielle and Stephen Lewis, advocates for impactful entrepreneurship, guide you on the path where purpose meets business. Join us to slow down, reconnect, and explore the challenges of under-resourced entrepreneurs, uncovering the unique journey of building businesses that make a difference. Now, your hosts.
Welcome, everyone, to the Do Good X podcast. My name is Kimberly Danielle, and I am a community builder, a coach, and a communication strategist who comes from generations of faith-driven leaders and entrepreneurs who believe that our purpose should contribute to the common good. Hi, Stephen. I am here with Stephen, my co-host.
Hey, Kimberly, it's good to be with you. As you know, I am a catalyst for positive change in communities and businesses for over 2 decades. I've inspired leaders and entrepreneurs to live and work on purpose with intention, their faith, and a commitment to their well-being. And I'm excited for our conversation today with one of our return guests, Rachel Wilson. Oftentimes, conversations about entrepreneurship and money often focus on raising capital, growing, or chasing the next opportunity. But today, we're not only chatting about that, but more importantly, the systems and the decisions that determine long-term financial health, which is what founders need to understand to build businesses that are sustainable and resilient over time. And so we've brought Rachel Wilson back with us this time to talk about that subject. And so I'm excited to get into that. And as you know, Rachel is operations and capital access strategist with over a decade of experience working across healthcare, technology, automotive, and consumer products. Rachel is the founding partner of Project Wellspring, which is an initiative working to mobilize $1 billion and beyond in purpose-driven capital to accelerate equitable wealth creation. Rachel has helped raise and manage more than $100 million in venture and non-dilutive funding, partnering with founders to design governance and operating models that support sustainable long-term growth. And her work bridges philanthropic, private, and public networks to create more equitable funding pathways for underrepresented founders. And so she joined us in season 1 to talk about all things capital and venture. And today, we're continuing that conversation and really expanding beyond funding to explore what it takes to build a financially healthy, sustainable business. And so we're glad to have you back, Rachel. Welcome.
I am blessed to be here with you guys again. It was such a pleasure to be with you guys last year in person and get to meet some amazing founders and builders and talk about, building sustainable and, ongoing operationally sound businesses. So glad to be able to be here again with you guys, and thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, we're glad to have you with us. So let's just jump right in. How do you define wealth for founders beyond just business evaluation?
That is such a good question, Stephen. I'm a faith-driven person, so first and foremost, for me, it's about purpose. And
Mm.
so, where does that align with what the outcomes I'm looking for from a business perspective? Um, if you lean into that, I think that does help you to ensure that you have a North Star as to what you always want your outcome to be. Doesn't mean that things can't change, that you may not, you may veer off or you may go in a different direction. But I do think always aligning yourself with what the end result is, what the goal is, and for us believers, what is it that God has in store for us, and those treasures, those talents that we have, that we want to make sure that we're doing on His behalf to support and bring others to the purpose that we've been put here on earth to do.
Yeah, that's good. I like that idea. Thinking about wealth beyond a business validation in terms of purpose, kind of it being the North Star, or to think about, wealth in regards to purpose, kind of like, like how does purpose become the currency or uh, the way in which you think about building wealth is a really interesting concept, I think, for social entrepreneurs in general, and particularly those who are faith oriented. So I appreciate that.
I appreciate that perspective too. I have not heard purpose come up as a form of value and wealth as it pertains to businesses in this space and in this way. So I appreciate that perspective as well.
Yeah, just to double click on that, I would say that, wealth in general is thought of as like the accumulation of something. How do we accumulate something so then that way um, we can continue to live the lifestyle that we want for ourselves or for our family. And if we start from a place of purpose, then that accumulation doesn't just become about scarcity. It becomes more about how can we ensure that that accumulation is going for the purposes that we want it to have. A good case in point is when my husband and I just bought our home, and we were, starting, off as newlyweds and trying to think through, what is it that we really want to have this house for. Um, Immediately we thought of like equity. We want to make sure that we get the most out of this asset, so then that way we can have the ability to, grow and, our start of our wealth journey. But when we really sat down to think about like, well, at the end of the day, what is this asset going to do? What are we thinking towards? Who do we want to have it go to, whether we have kids or not? That helps to really level set like what the end purpose is of the assets that we are accumulating. And I do a lot of that work when I talk to a lot of our clients at Project Wellspring about that as well. They're really clear about, hey, this is the philanthropic vision that I have, but I try to help them to think through like, well, where are all the things where you see gaps in society or changes that you want to make? And with the wealth that you're building and that you are accumulating, where do you want to see that flourish for others? And then that tends to help them think more broadly around, this idea of wealth, not just like I said, a scarcity mindset and have to hoard, but I'm accumulating it on behalf of a greater, wider purpose.
Yeah, it brings meaning to your accumulation.
Yes.
Yeah. That is beyond just your self satisfaction, but how it's beneficial to a broader world or community or context beyond yourself.
100%.
And congratulations. Since the first time you were with us on the podcast last season, you have gotten married and also you have shifted in your roles. So professionally, but congratulations on all the things. And you talked a bit about conversations that you have with founders that you're working with through Project Wellspring, and I'm sure you have talked to founders who are generating revenue, raising money, and also likely those who are a bit financially unstable. So you've seen what these numbers can look like on paper and what they can look like in actuality behind the scenes. What given this experience that you have, what's the difference? What would you say is the difference between a business that is profitable on paper and one that is actually financially healthy? And how can you tell?
So at a basic level, if we're just talking quantitatively at numbers. So a business that has runway, a business that has the ability to, pay for their expenses and not be in the red, a business that can look at their EBITDA or profit and say like, okay, I have the ability to reinvest back into the business. Those are basic sure signs of showing that okay, you have made it to a point where the business can be sustainable. Um, when those things are not in place, where you're kind of, robbing Peter to pay Paul, you are constantly looking at, debt as a structure, or especially very high interest rate debt as an option to pay for things. You're borrowing a lot. You, tend to see that. You're not getting a lot of traction or stickiness from your customer base, or the services that you're offering. Those are kind of telltale signs that the business is maybe not moving in the best direction and may have some issues with sustainability.
Mm.
That being said, let's say you are on the former. You are doing really well. You do see that you are able to be profitable. You have some runway, preferably if that is in the startup or venture space, somewhere around, 18 to 24 months, just given the market, is a good place to have, like, to just cash on hand just for incidences or rainy days. But beyond just the quantitative piece, um, you see that you're making an impact with the business. Like, the goal of what you were looking for the business to do is actually happening. Um, you're additive to society. You're not being extractive, even if you are disrupting an industry, which could be really great. But what is that end result going to be? So, as I think about AI, for example, and a lot of the companies that we're seeing come out of this current boom, there might be companies that are getting a lot of investment. Maybe they do have some runway, but when you look at the service that they're offering, it's more of a feature. They're probably also being able to
Mhm.
kind of ride the wave of what's going on because of just such a high interest in that area. And so you do have to be careful that you're not just in something that is just highly sought after, really popular, for your business as well. Like, how do you sustain beyond popularity upon just the moment, and that you just definitely have a longer curve to stay within the market as well. And that's where I think it goes back to what I originally said around purpose. If you lead with that as you think about, what you're building and the sustainability of it, then you can always point to that being where you want to go, versus if you're kind of just following along the route of what is popular and what everybody thinks is the thing, today. And I have definitely seen examples where there's a lot of interest in, like, fintech AI companies, or somebody who, has some really amazing features for an application that they're building. Um, but then, a year or two later, there's not a lot of interest from the investors. This tends to happen a lot with CPG as well too. We're really onto some new product or something that was really hype on TikTok or whatever.
Mhm.
And then, unfortunately, because there wasn't really a true connection to the customers, there wasn't an outlook as to what, like, your big vision is that you're trying to change and make impact for, then you tend to just kind of go along with what is popular at that time. So, having profitability from a numerical standpoint, definitely as an investor, you want to see that. But you also want to make sure that the founders, the business owners, the entrepreneurs are really thinking beyond just the moment in time where they're seeing traction, and what their full purpose is as well.
So, what financial decisions early on tend to haunt founders later?
I would say, when I think about um, businesses, because a lot of times we do focus, when we say founders, people think of, the tech startups,
Mhm.
the companies that have some kind of enterprise or SaaS, software as a service business. um, that tends to be the focal point. But for any business, if they're thinking about the challenges of what they're trying to build, and um, kind of the things that they need to watch out for as they are trying to build that sustainability. I think they really have to ensure that they have the right tools and team in place. And I think that that sometimes gets missed because we focus so much on the technology of it. And you as a founder may not necessarily have all of the expertise. So having the right people at the top in the beginning is really critical to ensure that the things that you don't know and you don't know what you don't know are being sustained, being helped by those team members, and then making sure you have the right kind of tools in place to ensure that everybody across the team also is communicating well with each other. Very simple things, but a lot of times when it comes to operations, it really is setting up your existing infrastructure for success so that you're not reactive later. And that tends to happen a lot, is like, let's go for getting the customers, making the money, moving really fast, but we haven't really sat down to make sure that, hey, do I have all of the operational things in a good place? My legal is good. I've set up my company for the best way from a tax advantage perspective. I've got a really good, nice board, or at least a few people that I can go to advise me on challenges or issues. I feel really good about, this one thing that I'm working on. I'm not trying to spread myself too thin across all these products or services. Like those kinds of gut checks and like infrastructure things, I think help to ensure that you're on the right track and you're not putting yourself in a bad position.
We had the gift for you, those of you who are tuning in. We had the gift of having Rachel join us at our entrepreneurship retreat last year to talk with some founders about operations. And one thing, Rachel, that I've gathered from what you've shared previously with founders in our programs or just in general is that financial stress is not often just about money. It's usually connected to operations and systems that aren't working, or maybe they weren't built in the first place. So, what operational gaps would you say tend to create the most financial stress?
That's a really great question, Kimberly, because I think that w- outside of just the operational piece, if I take a step back, thinking through um, mental stability and just mental wealth and healthiness, you have to, one, just go in knowing that you are attempting to do something that is a very challenging thing to do, to build a business, to build something from out of thin air to make it reality. And that in itself means that, you have to have a lot of mental strength. You have to have the ability to know that you can persevere, set yourself up for success for those times that you are going to have failures, because that is going to happen. So going into the business and building it up from that perspective also really helps. Operationally, the things that probably do get dismissed the most are the things that are, like I said, are the boring, simple stuff. Um, Legal being in the right place. And I've found lots of situations where, founders and other allocators don't have the right processes or terms in place for their business. So thinking about, should I have an S corp or a C corp? Am I still an LLC? Those things can hurt you later down the line if you are looking for investors, because they want to see more C corp businesses. If you are just kind of starting as a lifestyle business, LLC might be okay for right now. But understanding those different types of options that you may have and what that looks like later down the line is really imperative. Um, Staying abreast of on the tax side of things as well too also really matters, very much so. Um, again, as you think about some of the policy changes that have most recently happened with like the Big Beautiful Bill, a lot of founders may have a tendency to say, oh, because I have say, an issue with the administration, I'm not going to take into account what this Big Beautiful Bill is about. And then not realize that there are certain things in there. If you are an entrepreneur, if you do have a business, you actually could take total advantage of. So making sure you're aware of these different options that could really help the business, like qualified small business credits, the QSBS, opportunities. If you're a manufacturer, especially in, rural areas, there are lots of different things you might be able to take advantage of that you wouldn't otherwise. And so it's really critical that, legal and tax is in a very good position, um, not trying to remove uh, cash and assets in ways because you're like, oh, this would be nice to go buy that nice car that I've been looking at, or I want to go on that nice trip. It's good to make sure that you are, talking to experts, a tax accountant, attorneys sometimes, um, your legal advisor about the things that you want to do with what you've done with the business, so then that way it doesn't affect you later. Because I've definitely seen that, with different founders, entrepreneurs, making a lot of money, and they are like, I'm going to go buy this really big equipment that I need for the business, or take some portion of that and send it off to my personal account so I can go on a trip with my family. But you didn't do it in a way that um, notates it across like how you're moving that cash, or you didn't talk to anyone about it. It's those simple things that may seem like it's an easy thing to do, and it's because it's so easy to just transact things and sign off on things that you may miss a lot of the particulars of how that could harm you from a legal perspective and from a tax perspective. So I definitely highly suggest to founders to make sure that they have their legal and their tax things in order, because those are things that can bite you and you didn't know it.
So as you talk about it, it makes me think about what systems should founders put in place earlier than they usually do. So when you think about setting up the organization, you talked about legal and tax, but are there particular systems types of things or processes and procedures that founders should give attention to early on that they typically don't, but they should?
Yes. So, I think that I like to keep things simple because I know sometimes there's a lot of different tools out there, there's a lot of different systems that you could go subscribe to, purchase, and all the things. Um, but first and foremost, have an external team, whether that's your legal team, your, tax team that you can depend on, who can check the things when you need to check them. And there's easy tools like, the legal Zooms of the world and that kind of stuff that can just be a third party to help um, keep you compliant.
Mhm.
And then I also love a good way to just track things. So whether that is in a spreadsheet, that's totally fine. But if you can, have a system that can help you, like a CRM and a project task tool, it helps really to just clear up the nuance, clear up some of the things that probably are bombarding your inbox every day. I know that for me, that helps a lot because I get a lot of emails. And so just being
Mhm.
able to go to a task tool like an Asana, um, or a Monday, these different types of tools. And even your CRM may have one as well. Um,
Mhm.
but it does keep me on track to what is most important. And I think that too can help alleviate some of these challenges. And now with AI, oh my gosh, like you can, you can pretty much set up yourself for success. I know that I definitely use a lot of agentic AI tools and integrate them to my emails, to my task tools. So make everything talk to each other. And that has been a tremendous resource for me. So I can go in and say, like, hey, AI, I need like a brief on the last few things I did last week across these particular companies, and I need to report out X, Y, and Z. And because it's connected to my meetings, my calendar, and the emails, it has that context. And so there's a lot more better ways than in the past, more than ever, to help people just be more efficient, and also reduce some of your costs um, that you probably would have had in the past. Now, if you want, you could vibe code and create your own CRM if you wanted to. And so, yeah, there's definitely a lot of different tools, but for simplistic sake, and for those who are like, man, it's just these subscriptions add up, because they do. Um, just putting together really simple templates that, have a few columns in there where you can track, what's the most important things to do, is really, really helpful versus trying to, buy Salesforce when you only are making less than $1 million a year. That's probably not a good use of your resources.
Well, speaking of resources, because this is a helpful conversation and there's more that we say about operations and
Yeah.
systems, but it is a time for us to turn to our resource roundup where we gather up tools and tips and resources that can help entrepreneurs build strong and sustainable businesses. So, Rachel, we'd like to transition to talk a little bit more about resources that can be applicable to actual founders in their business. So, with that, let me ask you the first question. What is one financial health building habit
Mm.
that every founder should build this year?
I would say one of the first is getting a self-directed IRA, especially if you are a solopreneur, because that's a way for you to start having some kind of set asides and savings for yourself versus feeling like because you're an entrepreneur, you just don't have access to retirement planning options. So, to me, I think one of the best tools out there, especially for entrepreneurs and solopreneurs for sure, is to have one of those in their back pocket.
If a founder wants to build a business that generates wealth, what's the most important financial shift that they should make or system that they should put in place?
This is a good question, Kimberly, because there's so many different options out there. But like I said, I like to keep things really simple for people so that, like, wherever you are in your journey, like pretty much anybody could do. Um, so to build wealth to start, once the business is in a place where you are profitable, you're paying your bills, um, you're in the black, it's a good idea to start setting aside some dollars, one, to make sure that you're paying yourself, because you should, and to be making sure that you set up like a self-directed IRA, and have a wealth advisor. I know that there are some really great organizations out there like Wealthmore, um, woman-owned business that makes it a little bit more accessible for everyday folks to have access to a wealth advisor. And so things like that will help you to just get a sense of where you should be placing your dollars, and starting to accumulate for the purposes that you want to see at the end of the day. And I think just small things like that, especially the wealth advisor piece, is a really great way to start the process of building wealth. Now, once you get in advance, then you want to start thinking about, well, how does my wealth strategy think about my tax strategy? Because at the end of the day, that also too is a way to continue to build upon your wealth. You want to give back to society, you want to support things too. but not looking at tax as a haven and more of a way for you to make decisions on where you want your dollars to go is also another option as well. So, hey, I'm going to start a donor advised fund. And this is a way for me to set aside dollars so that I can give to the places I want to give to. And I have someone who can oversee that with me to help me with that plan. And now I can either use that for investing into other businesses. I now can use that to grant to other businesses or people, organizations that I care about. And at the same time, I'm also getting that tax liability. So I think as you start to get a little bit more built up in your wealth and you start to have more of these advanced conversations, I do think thinking about your philanthropic strategy, how it relates to your tax reduction, but also goes towards the purpose driven areas that you care about can also help you to build wealth too.
So, where can founders go to learn more about what operational systems and processes that they need to consider developing? And and particularly at what stages of the development of their business?
Well, earliest stages, I am a huge fan of working within your local communities with like great, accelerators or like
Mm.
startup spaces, you guys have amazing programs yourself. People should definitely be taking advantage of that. And then also thinking about peer networks that can be really resourceful. So, like here in Atlanta, Goody Nation is a great one for people just to be able to connect with newly startup peers, get connected to corporate, organizations that really care about connecting to startups and founders. That's a really great place to start. Chambers of commerce as well. I know, Gen Z might be like, what is that? I don't know. But but I do think that they can have a purpose because I do think that leaning on wisdom, leaning on previous experience is just a really great way to build up knowledge of things that you don't have to fall through or fail through as well, leaning on other folks who have grown amazing businesses. So those are some really great places to lean on as you're developing more and making a larger organization. Um, and then I do think organizations that can give you more national, global exposure can also be helpful as well. So organizations like EY's program for entrepreneurs,
Mhm.
Endeavor that has a global and national presence and network. To me, that allows for you to just get beyond the local market. And now, how does your business expand to these other places? But then also connect you to these amazing other entrepreneurs and founders who built businesses in the US and outside the US.
Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah, those are all helpful resources. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, what I always love is that you provide clear resources to people who are listening in, even at our in-person gathering, very specific resources that you can go online and research right now and take advantage of. So really appreciate you offering those and also breaking this down in a practical way. So if you are tuning in and carrying financial pressure or operational uncertainty or questions about sustainability, I really hope that this conversation offers some clarity and resources and maybe even encouragement for your work. And at Do Get X, we really try to create a space for honest conversations, shared learning, and community. So entrepreneurs like you don't have to do this alone. And if that support resonates with you right now, you can explore more at dogoodx.org. Now we are going to shift to our last segment off the cuff where we have a series of questions. And Rachel did this before with us in season one, but we are going to switch it up a little bit on you, Rachel, and ask some other questions as well. So I'm going to get us started. And my first question for you is, what does it mean to you to do good?
Do good to me really starts, so and I say this all the time to everybody that I meet. "Oh, Rachel, what are you about?" My faith, my family, and my friends. I have a sign in my house that says this as well. And so to me, doing good is about really sticking to my life purpose and the gifts that I've been given, by God. Always aligning to that, always making sure that I'm being humbled in that, and being able to support people. I'm a connector, so I love sharing knowledge where knowledge is lacking. I like trying to find ways to make the world a little smaller. So then that way we can all be able to support each other. So for me, that is the roadmap of doing good.
What is one value that guides your work?
Tenacity.
Mm.
Tenacity is a value that I think has been instilled in me since a little girl. My dad, serial entrepreneur, and a person who um, didn't finish high school. Um, he didn't go to college, but out of all these things, didn't have the best upbringing as well. But in spite of all those things, he was able to persevere and be tenacious about it, God fearing about it, and became really successful in spite of all of the different challenges that he's had. And so I've learned so much about that skill, and have been really blessed that I've had a dad like that who's been able to teach me those things.
Mm.
Lots of different books from Jim Rohn to How to Win Friends and Influence People, all the things. And so I'm really grateful that I've been able to learn that skill of tenacity and perseverance.
How has your faith shaped the way that you lead and help others build their business?
It's a focal point. It helps me to check myself because I'm not perfect. There are definitely days where I might see something, something may happen, with the person, and in my mind, I'm not saying such nice things. And so it's nice to always go back to like, you know, uh, you know, following those Christian morals to ensure that I continue to walk on the right path, and course correct myself where needed, and also in the decisions that I decide to make, or who I have in my life, or the seasons and things that I'm in. So for me, I think just always keeping that first and foremost helps me to make sure that I stay on track. At least I'm trying to, guys. Well,
Well, what's one piece of wisdom that you have discovered in your work with entrepreneurs?
the founders, if going back to that scarcity mindset, that there is abundance, and it may not look exactly the way that you initially were coming at it. So keeping an open mind and knowing that there is enough. We talk about the lack of capital or lack of resources. No, there's a ton of it. For example, in the philanthropic space, there's over $300 billion just sitting around, not moving anywhere, which is why for Project Wellspring, we're big on like how do we unlock that capital to actually move it to impact across asset classes and help people to figure out what that looks like for their own, purpose driven, passions. And
Mm.
so telling founders that too, that there's always alternative ways. I teach a lot of founders about just thinking differently about their whys, thinking differently about their the way that they go after capital or seek capital is really important too. And the way that you're approaching people about those things. So coming at things from an abundance mindset, I think really helps them. And I think that has helped me to share a little bit of wisdom with them about that. And hopefully many people just kind of take that to heart because it's not exactly always what you think it is. And there's always, other routes, other avenues to go after the thing that you're seeking.
This question I am going to ask you again. I'm curious, in this season, how much of your success do you believe you would attribute to your own grit, will, and hustle versus your faith?
I attribute everything to my faith. So, there last year was a very challenging year. Um, in 2024, I was a part of a fund. We were looking to raise a bunch of money. And then a lot of the DEI challenges had come through, which impacted us being able to fundraise. So I was left open. I was still doing work with what I was doing with Project Wellspring, but we were, building the firm as well. Um, but in that interim, I had to figure out what I'm going to do. And I think I don't think, I know because of my faith, it allowed me to do the impossible, build on strength that I needed. Thank God for an amazing, husband that I have who was supportive, like, oh, you're figured out, it'll all, all work out. Um, but because of that, it helped me to have a place to lean on when I felt like I didn't have, another option. And so for me, without it, it would be so difficult to be able to see the success that I have now. And I'm really grateful for um, the investors that we've been able to have come on board, the relationships that we have, some amazing people in sports and entertainment who are building with us around the things that they want to see in their lives. And all this wouldn't have happened if, um, my faith wasn't there. So I attribute it all day to his glory. So yes.
So complete this sentence given where you are in this season of your life and entrepreneurial journey. We just say, because of your entrepreneurial endeavors and tenacity, businesses and communities will be more able to do.
Connect. They will be able to do they will be able to connect um, more extensively, more broadly, more with more open mind. I just want people more to share. And I think the more that we do that, and we collaborate with each other, and we are open enough to share the knowledge that we have, we'll probably see a lot easier roads for each other than we do doing things alone.
Mm.
Mm.
Well, Rachel, with that, we'll leave it there. And you've given us a lot of food for thought to think about operations and systems and the way to think about wealth. And so, again, thank you for what you do and for joining us today.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys. You guys do the work. You're great at what you do. I'm just always just thankful to be a part and be in y'all's presence. So thank you guys so much.
We appreciate you. And for those of you who are tuning in, we hope that you continue this journey with us in this season. And until next time, be well and do good.
Thank you for listening to the Do Good X podcast. To continue the conversation or access our resources, visit www.dogoodx.org. Join us again for conversations that will nourish your soul, ignite your dreams, and empower you to build an impactful business, one intentional step at a time. Until then, keep striving, thriving, and doing good.